Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Hu. I am the founder of SurrogateFirst, and SurrogateFirst has been a full service agency for surrogacy for the last 5 years. I'm intended parent myself. My wife, Lena, is our fellow founder with me. We currently have about 15 staff spread across the US. Last year, we did about 100 matches. And this year we'll be doing about the same. So we're fast growing. We really care about the industry, and we really care about intended parents as well as surrogates. And that's why we came about to do this survey. So today's webinar is the State of Surrogacy 2023. Now, I'd just like to give you a brief history of how we came about to have the survey. 2 weeks ago, we launched a survey, and I think it's been a real blessing that people in the media have picked it up. I think it's a great sign so that we can share, we can educate, and we can also find some insights to share with the mainstream America. So from where surrogacy has come the last 12 years of when we started our journey and the 5 years that we've been in the agency, I think it's just great to see that there's a lot more openness, a lot more willingness to understand, and for people to know that is an option and a viable option. A little bit more about the survey itself. It started in 2019. I started the first survey with over 190 experienced surrogates hoping to share their experience. And of course, COVID happened and I was not able to publish it. I took a break from that to focus on the business. And then earlier this year in 23, we were able to complete the second round of surveys for 160 plus experienced surrogates. So this gave us a really, really amazing amount of information and data, and also 2 points of reference of before COVID and after COVID. So why did we do the survey? One is there's been a huge lack of available data that can help us drive our insights and our conclusions. Second is that there isn't a lot of voices from the surrogates. So that's why we decided to do the survey. Next is we were able to identify a lot of the challenges that intended parents and surrogates face. We're able to find some really amazing insights. And then lastly, we can find some solutions from these findings. And ultimately, it's all about having a safer and more successful surrogacy journey for all of us involved. Everyone in the industry, from the lawyers to the agencies, to the IVF clinics, to the intended parents, and most importantly, to the surrogates themselves. So for today's housekeeping, if you look into the chat, you'll be able to see all my contact information. You'll be able to follow and download the slides. If you have not already, you'll be able to apply and also to sign up for a consult. Our applications, initial applications are very short, 3 to 5 minutes. And hopefully if you enjoy our presentation or you just want some information, please sign up. Secondly is there's a Q&A option. We do have our staff in the background that will be responding and prompting me to answer. But at any given time, I will stop periodically to answer questions. So please throw them in right now or whenever you have the need to. And lastly, this is very important. Please wait till the end and complete our survey. It's only about 5 questions, but it helps us tremendously to be able to pinpoint the needs of our audience and then to make our next webinar even more poignant and impactful. So the contents. Today, we're going to talk about the surrogates background. We're talking about the pre-journey findings, during the journey findings, post-journey findings, and compensation. So I have come up with about 12 key points of the key findings and executive summary. I'm going to go over each one of them, but within the presentation. So I'm not going to read them here, but of course, they're all listed very easily here for us to take a look. So I'm going to start off with the surrogates background. And the number one key finding, the first key finding, is that surrogates are truly special. I think if we didn't know this already, then these findings will help us to understand a little bit about the psyche of the surrogates themselves. So the number one and number two most important factors of choosing to become surrogate was the desire to help a couple have a family. and the calling to help others. So I believe that surrogates are truly altruistic. And furthermore, they are more educated and have a higher household income than the average American woman. So why would I combine these two facts together? It's very simple, is that I think that these two facts really demystify the stereotypes that are often spoken or assumed by people who do not understand surrogacy or surrogates' motivations. Number one is that they are compensation driven. And number two is that they are on the lower socioeconomic side of the spectrum and therefore potentially being taken advantage of. So from all of the surrogates that we surveyed, these findings really do shatter those stereotypes. So we dig a little bit deeper. Your average surrogate is going to be between the ages of 30 to 39. They're going to be living in the city, and I don't think that's any surprise. Most surrogates are married, although there is a trend for single surrogates more and more so. And we do have multiple cuts of the data, but today is just the overall findings of the survey. And later on, I'll go into some of the details, but predominantly the race of surrogates are white, and the most up and coming minority groups are Hispanic and Black. And in another survey, I'll be explaining like what kind of trends are happening in all these different areas as well. And most likely they are religious. And I wasn't really surprised, but I think it's very interesting that over 50% of people that are surrogates are religious, and most of them are from the Christian faith. And here is the findings that I found that I highlighted was, if you can see the 4-year college degree or better, it's 46% of all the surrogates that were complete our survey. And then 2 or more of vocational training, another 33%. So this is higher than the US average population of 39%. And then also for the combined household income, the average was $94,000 per household, also quite high. And I think the middle was about $75,000. And lastly was they're have high support from their immediate family. I think this is very important. I have another key finding on that, but I just wanted to highlight that one key finding about the surrogate stereotypes. And a little bit inside of the population of the respondents, most of them were within the last year, and majority of them have just been one-time surrogates as well. This is very important to me in terms of the success of a journey. I believe that, this is the slide about the motivation. Yes, so the first two is a desire to help a couple have a family, calling to help others in need. And as you can see, the least important one was on compensation. So I thought that was very, very telling. The previous 2019 survey only had 3 options, and this year has 5, and the compensation was number 2 previously, and now it's dropped down to the least important. So later on, you can take a closer look at that, but I just wanted to share that really important fact. Pre-journey findings, also very important here, is that 50% of surrogates are willing to work with the LGBTQ intended parents. And in general, the surrogates are pretty flexible, pretty open in terms of their willingness to work with LGBTQ, with international parents, as well as their stances on termination, as well as with vaccination, which we'll be going into in the next couple of slides. But that being said, there's always a spectrum. There's always a wide spectrum of surrogates who are no-term or only want to work with certain types of intended parents. But for the most part, surrogates are very, very flexible and open. So the types of intended parents that surrogates can work with are traditional families, single parents, and same-sex couples. Single parents in the last 3 to 4 years has really increased. I think in the beginning, 5 years ago, I saw maybe 1 or 2. Now there's about 20% of our clientele are single parents. And beyond single parents, about 50% of our clientele are same-sex and 50% are traditional. So as the years go on, there's more and more same-sex couples having children and singles. And of course, traditional families is pretty consistent. And again, for the different types of intended parents that surrogates are willing to carry for, you'll see that predominantly it's domestic US, but they are also open to working with international families as well. In terms of the vaccination, I think that, during COVID, it was a very, very hot topic. There was a lot of fascination and interest about if surrogates are willing to take the COVID vaccination, what impacts would it have them on the health, on the contract, on compensation. But I think now that COVID has, been off the pandemic list and there's some normalization with the vaccination and COVID itself, you'll see that the vaccination rate is in line with what is out in the general population of the US. It is a little bit lower, but I wouldn't say that it's tremendously lower. And also that, not vaccinated but willing, if asked, is about 15%. And for not vaccinated and not willing to, about 18%. I can just say the trend in general is that the surrogates are not willing to be vaccinated, the ones that are not already committed to being vaccinated. I will share with that in another survey upcoming, but just wanted to add in that tidbit to you. In terms of termination stance, about 50% of the surrogates are willing to terminate if it's a life-threatening medical reasons or it's doctor recommended, okay? And then another 34% is willing to have a termination at the intended parent's discretion, and 13% saying none at all. So this in itself, I don't think it has a lot of face value, but I think if you dig deeper in terms of independent surrogacy and agency surrogacy, or people who carry for same sex and people who don't, then you'll see a more drastic difference. But I can just tell you in general, the trend is that intended parents are more willing to allow the intended termination at the intended parent's discretion. That tends to be on the increase, okay? And a little bit about the time it takes surrogates to consider and do the research and really understand, if they want to become a surrogate, because it is a huge commitment. It's a life-changing commitment. It's oftentimes 2 years commitment. So they do take about, on average, 7 months. As you can see, it's pretty widespread, but just want to give you an idea that surrogates do take their time. They do contemplate this very seriously before they do make a commitment to become a surrogate. I've been asking a lot of questions, and I'm just curious if anyone would like to ask any questions, please do so in the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to chime in and answer any questions you might have. The next key finding is that the majority of surrogates choose to work with the agency. And I think that it's split pretty much down the middle, 50%. So I was very happy with the, in terms of the participation rate, that we had a very healthy mix of intended people who were independent surrogates and people who were working with the agency. So we got a really balanced mix of results that you're seeing today. And I'll go into a little bit more detail of beyond just working independently, we also split that information to people who did independent surrogacy, but managed it by the surrogate themselves, and also did independent surrogacy, but managed it mainly by the intended parents. So in a follow-up survey results, we do split that up, and it's pretty interesting to see the differences between the surrogates that use the agency versus the ones that did not, and even a little bit deeper if it was managed by themselves or by the intended parent. But I can say in general, by the data driven, is that surrogates who worked with agencies had a better experience overall. They had less emotional and medical issues, and they were happier in their journey. And of course, for a large part of the agency is helping, and they don't have as much stress, and there's a buffer between independent parents and the surrogate communication, etc. So I'm not going to get into too deep in that today, but I just want to let you know that in the future, we'll be talking about this very, very important difference between independent surrogacy and agency surrogacy, and how it's managed. Both are good, both are fine, but I believe that if you're going to do independently, you also need to understand where some of the pitfalls might be and where you can address them before they become potential issues. So the findings during the journey, I don't think this is a surprise, but surrogates remain in very high demand. It's been very consistent that the match times are very short. Within 3 months to 6 months, you can see the percentages very, very high. And there's also been a recent spike in terms of the base compensation. I'll go into that later at the end of this presentation. And also, you know, the high first-time transfer success also reflect an ongoing demand because of the increased ability of the medical advances. And lastly, I did not mention on this because it wasn't in the survey, but I can tell you, you can juxtapose the time it takes a surrogate to be matched compared to the time that it takes intended parent to get matched. So if you're an intended parent out there, I think that you understand that it's taking 3, 6, 9, 12 months, even more to get matched with a surrogate. But with the surrogate side, for our surrogates, if we don't match them in a month, they're already asking us, hey, what's going on? Do I need to find another agency? And they're very, very keen on getting matched very quickly. So I think that also is a reflection of how high of a demand there is for current surrogates. In terms of how long is the wait time between when they were ready to become a surrogate and they're matched, on average was 5.5 months. And of course, this was pretty recent data within the last year to 2 years. And you can see that in less than 3 months, 40%, and then within the 3 to 6 months was 69% cumulatively. So surrogates are being matched very quickly. I believe that if you're an intended parent and you see a surrogate that meets your criteria, that you really need to consider it pretty seriously, you're not going to see 3 to 5 different surrogates before you can make a choice. Usually from our agency, we do a lot of the screening and the vetting. And once we present someone, it's a good fit already. We've discussed it internally and also based on both sides' requirements. So just to give you a little idea of how long it's taking for the surrogate side, what to expect in terms of times of matching. Next is how many attempts were required to be successfully become pregnant. I think first-time transfers, pretty high, 57%. And also within 2, then we see it over 9 out of 8 times. So I would like to just make a caveat here is that if you're using an egg donor, okay, then you're definitely going to have a much higher success rate on your first transfer, higher than 57%. I would say that would be closer to the 70s and mid 70s. If you're using your own embryos and they're PG tested and perhaps not all A grade quality, then your impact of your success rates will be substantial in terms of first time success or maybe even second. So this is just an average overall, but based on your combination of if you are traditional single same sex, if it's your own embryos or egg donor embryos, it all makes a difference in terms of the success rates. And therefore I wouldn't place too much emphasis on this one slide, but it's really based on your own personal circumstances. This one, I think I just wanted to make a point that majority of people are caring for traditional families. However, a lot of the surrogates are willing to carry for same sex. But I think what happens within the independent surrogacy world, it is harder to find a match with same-sex couples. There isn't a lot of platforms out there to pick and choose between intended parents. So I think that in terms of the marketplace, there is a imbalance for independent surrogates to be able to match with international also because there is a cultural difference, there's a language barrier, and also with same-sex couples, Usually they are working through an agency and not maybe on the platforms or the chat groups that people are matching directly. A little bit insight about intended parents and where they're living. I believe that it says there's a little bit of a increase in working with international, and that trend continues as their COVID has opened the doors for a lot more different families to come in comfortably without all the restrictions. So that's a trend that I see that will be continuing to happen. I think the key to surrogacy success, as I was talking about that before, very, very important. I think if you're a surrogate, if you're an intended parent, I think you have to really, really hone in on this one key factor is having a strong family support, okay? 93% of the surrogates said that the most important source of support was coming from their family, very important or important. So you can see here the findings, but I can just tell you that, there's different cuts of the information where there's even groups where that they were not getting support. It was unsupportive, very unimportant or unsupportive of the family. This is about if it's important to them or not. The second one I think is very interesting is the intended parents for whom you were a surrogate. That one, to me, was a surprise because that just tells me that the surrogates are putting more importance in terms of having a relationship with intended parents. And I think this is great for the intended parents that want to have a relationship with them. And we can go through the slides a little bit more, but 99% of the surrogates want to have some communication, if not a lot of communication, with the intended parents for at least the 12 months after they complete their surrogacy. So you can look through here, agency is important, the clinic's important, and as you go down, a little bit less so. But I think this is very important as an emphasis is that you really want to have the family support. And if that's a question mark, then you have to know that you have another strong network of people that are behind you. And in terms of how satisfied were you with each of the following of your recent surrogacy experiences, we broke these down into the major sections of surrogacy in terms of legal, in terms of dealing with intended parents, the medical aspects, birth and preparation, and also post-birth and postpartum. So as you can see, the legal aspects of the surrogacy and dealing with intended parents, they were quite satisfied and also very satisfied, including dealing with the medical clearance. I think the only kind of finding I have here that was a little bit different for me in terms of the findings is, the post-birth, postpartum experience. And we do have a little bit of the details that I will share about those experiences. But I think it's very, very important to emphasize that, hey, out of all the aspects of surrogacy, the one that they did not enjoy the most is post-birth and postpartum. And I think that's where we drop the ball a lot as intended parents and agencies about caring for the surrogate all the way through the journey. It does not end with just the birth. It continues post-birth for them to get back to their pre-surrogacy life, but also helping them to make sure that they're healthy mentally and also physically, okay? So the next slide is in terms of complications. Majority of surrogates did not have complications. I'm not going to go into the details too much of this slide, but I think it's important to know that, hey, for surrogates, these tend to be the higher likelihood of complications to happen during surrogacy pregnancies. But in terms of the majority, did not experience any of the physical complications. And this one, again, as I mentioned before, 99% of the surrogates wanted to have some communication at the minimum with their surrogates for the 12 months after they gave birth. And the ones who wanted frequent communication was up to 46%. So I think this is a great expectation to know in terms of being an intended parent that, they do want to have a relationship. Surrogates want to have a relationship. That's why they're helping. They want to have communication. And we have to really talk about that during the match, the pre-match, to make sure that we have those expectations clearly noted for everyone. All right, to the post-journey findings. Before we start, if there's anyone who has any questions, please post them up on the Q&A. I would love to follow up. I think we have about 10 minutes left in our presentation, and then I'll be able to answer any questions that we have. But moving swiftly along to the post-journey kind of findings is that the supermajority of surrogates did not experience postpartum depression and would consider surrogacy again. I think this is great news. These are great insights, but also that, that they're having a good experience. So therefore, they're willing to have a repeat journey with another intended parent. The types of struggles that they experienced were getting back to pre-surrogacy weight, recovering from pregnancy mental health issues, or recovering from pregnancy health-related issues. These are the general type of issues, percentage that they were facing. So although that I think that this is later on in line with kind of like the general population of people who are pregnant, I think it's interesting to know that majority of people did not have struggles. But this one about the pre-surrogacy weight, I think is something that was, 5 years ago, last year, this year, in the future, is always going to be like the biggest concern of surrogates, is kind of getting back to their lifestyle previously. Someone who had just asked a question, is there weight requirements? Yes, definitely. In the requirements, I think Ashley is going to be responding, but there's definitely the BMI requirements from the clinic, also the ASRM guidelines. And that is very, very important that, we have someone who is in a healthy situation in terms of body weight as well as mental health. So there's definitely a lot of requirements in terms of the BMI. Moving to the next one, did you experience, and specifically speaking to, the mental health related issues, we asked the surrogates, did you experience postpartum depression or anxiety? And I'm very, very pleased that, majority, 75%, supermajority did not. Those who did experience some depression and some anxiety. This is within line with the US average of, I found studies quoting 10 to 20%. But I think that this is in line with the general population. But still, I think we do need to spend some time to help surrogates work through these issues, and not just say, hey, it's done after the birth, and then we move on, and then you just have to take care of yourself. So moving on that line of conversation, I found that the surrogates were not seeking help for mental health issues. Although a lot of them, majority were not, I think it was very concerning that in 2019, 86% answered that they were receiving treatment. And in 2023, only 46%. So I do not have a pinpoint answer as to why people are not seeking treatment. I don't know if it's COVID related. I don't know if it might be who's paying for it or who has access to it, the resources. But this is a very concerning aspect. I think that us as agency, we always now insist in our agreement that there is at least $1,000 worth of budget for the surrogate to tap into to speak to a counselor or to a mental health professional if they experience postpartum anxiety or depression. Along those lines, even further question is, did you have this allocated to you, either through the agency or intended parents paying for it, or did you do so yourself, or was it just a no? So for our agency, we always have that line in there to make sure that's available to surrogates. I hope that if you're a surrogate or intended parent, that you really strongly consider to have this as part of your agreement with your contracts. This one was, again, another one about the the true facts of how much communication did you have. And again, they would like to have 99% communication, and you can see here 95% of the population of the surrogates did have communication with their intended parents, which is great. And I think this is going to be one of my last slides for the post journey, but surrogates are very happy. And I think that's amazing. I think they love doing what they do. And this statistic just proves it. 83% of surrogates say they would like to be repeats, and 8 out of 10 said they were either satisfied or very satisfied in their most recent journey. So 46% saying very satisfied, 37% saying satisfied. I think that's a great percentage. And it just reflects, again, on if they wanted to become a surrogate again and repeat, if they're eligible to, definitely would consider it. 49%, like 50% of surrogates, and then probably consider another 34%. So that is 83% of people who were surrogates would be willing to become a surrogate again. So that's fantastic. And it just makes me happy that surrogates are happy doing what they do. In terms of the last portion of the presentation and the survey findings is on compensation, fees, and benefits. I know everyone loves to hear about the details here. So if you have any questions about this, please load them up. I'll be happy to answer and share this first finding is surrogate benefits and base compensations have both jumped, and they continue to be on the rise. The benefits rose 35% from on average $9,100 in 2019 to $12,300 in 2023. And that includes both cash and non-cash benefits, just to be precise. And we will explain that a little bit in the next slide. Base compensation rose slower, but new base compensation expectations have also climbed. So from $50,000 in 2023 to $61,000 for future journeys if they're going to do a journey in the future. And I would just like to point out the 2019 average base compensation was $45,000. So within the 3-year range, it only increased about $5,000. It's substantial in terms of the base of $45,000. But from $50,000 to next year and years beyond, the average has increased by 22%. So that's quite substantial. Here is a comparison between 2019 and 2023. And, the approximate base compensation, did you receive $45,000 and in 2019, 2023 was $50,000. So I think that's a reasonable increase. And you can see that the higher end of more than 80,000, 70,000, 80,000 really bumped up in the last, few years. So that's something new that was not existing there about 4 years ago. So on the higher end of compensation requests is increasing. And from my studies of breaking the data apart, majority of that is coming from the independent side. But I can explain to that in our next future presentation. Besides base pay, what types of benefits do you receive? And almost across the board, I believe that it is 100%, is that the benefits, cash and non-cash, were all increased compared to 2029. And this is where I got that 9,100 compared to 12,300 figure. We're able to, estimate and average the benefits, especially the cash benefits. But just to give you an idea, some things that were before considered a benefit, now it's almost considered, something that is a must. Maternity clothing, let's say. Travel expenses, I think the majority that didn't, maybe they're in the same city. Legal services, a lot of these things that were not as prevalent before, we can see are a lot more prevalent, especially the cash bonuses, bonus at transfer, bonus at MedStart, and other bonuses. So just in general, the base compensation has increased, it's going to increase. The benefit side, as you can see, all these different benefits that we have listed out, they are all increased 100% over 2019, which it should be. But in terms of the percentage, 35%, that's a pretty substantial increase. So please bear that in mind if you're intended parent. Also, if you're surrogate, these are some of the responses from your fellow surrogates that you can also consider in terms of when you're speaking and negotiating your compensation package. Again, I think this is great. How satisfied were you with your compensation? And 89% of surrogates said they were either satisfied or very satisfied with their compensation. So I think that they are being compensated fairly in their perspective. And again, this is the one that I shared about for the future. We asked the surrogates that, hey, if you were going to be a surrogate this year in 2023, and it doesn't matter if you were a surrogate last year, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, what would be your expectation? And the expectation on average was 61,000. Okay. To be said, about 50% of those were between 50 and 70,000, the large majority of them. But you do see a very high percentage of 70,000 and above. That's about 27%, which previously that was not really the situation. So there are a lot more surrogates asking for substantial amount of compensation increase, but the middle ground has increased a little bit over the 45,000 average, moving into the $55,000, $60,000 average. Okay, so I think this is important for everyone to know in terms of, when you're managing expectations and you're looking at surrogates or you're talking to intended parents, that that there is a wide range, and we shouldn't all go towards the high or the low, but whatever suits your family, suits your situation, your budget, and also the expectation of why you are pursuing surrogacy if you're a surrogate. And we have broken that down too. Again, later in a future presentation, I'll be sharing the difference between independent and agency, as well as same-sex, single, and traditional families. So that's something that'll be in the future. So I would just like to recap that all my information is in the chat, and hopefully that you'll be signing up for one of our consults, or you can apply directly. Just want to recap a couple of the key findings. That the number one reason that surrogates become surrogates is to help a family. That's really the true motivation. Number two is surrogates love being surrogates. They want to do repeat surrogates. They enjoy the compensation. They enjoy just the whole journey itself. Third is the base compensation and the benefits are increasing. And then fourth is about half of the surrogates are willing to work with same-sex as well as single parents. So there's a broad range of surrogates to serve all types of different intended parents. And strict termination stance on when journey mainly due to religious beliefs. I believe that is a correlation. If they have stronger termination stances, they tend to be more religious. And the majority of surrogates did not have postpartum depression or anxiety and would really like to consider to be a surrogate in the future. So I did get a question here before we conclude about, I believe that there's scholarships and financial opportunities. Let me see this one. Yes. So Ashley actually just had a webinar yesterday with Sunfish, as well as, we work with a wide range of financial institutions that are able to help with financing and also with grants. There are some links and resources that we can share, but definitely surrogacy is a very expensive endeavor. And definitely there are a lot of companies that are out there that can help you plan your financials for you, including ourselves. During a consultation, we can break it down for you. We also have amazing compensation calculator. You can see here my number 3, and then except for surrogates, for intended parents as well. If you go to our website under intended parent or surrogate, you'll find the compensation calculators. So just to wrap it up, the next 3 steps you can do if you're a surrogate today is you can sign up for a free consultation. You can talk to Ashley or Jasenia. Ashley is a 4-time surrogate. Jasenia just had her surro baby just about a month or 2 ago. Second is you can see if you qualify and take a quick application. It only takes 3 minutes for surrogates. And also, if you're curious about what type of compensation you will be able to be eligible for, I created a 10-question kind of calculator that I believe that's the most accurate, most realistic one in the internet out there to answer you, that's interactive and give you a figure that is realistic. Next, if you're an intended parent, you can also schedule a consultation with myself or Ashley or one of our team members to answer any of your questions. It's never too early. It's never too late. We're here to help. We don't have a sales cycle timeline we're working on. We have intended parents that come back a year or 2 later. We have some surrogates that sign up and they want to be matched tomorrow. So we are flexible and we're willing to help anyone in any stage. You can also apply as intended parent. Again, the initial application is quite short. It's only 3 to 5 minutes. And then we can have a much longer conversation and see if we have any surrogates who can match for you or be on the waiting list. And lastly, we also have a surrogacy cost calculator that is about 50 to 60 questions, 6 different buckets. And it'll take about an hour to fill out, but it's the most comprehensive tool that I've seen out there. And I would love to sit down with you and review the summary and review the line items with you to explain exactly why it's those ranges. And a lot of the areas is not within our agency, but I just wanted to share all of that really useful information to everyone. So if there are any more questions, I would love to answer a few more. What is the agency fee structure for intended parents? So thank you for that question. I would love to speak a little bit about agencies in general, but then also about our kind of fee structure as well. So there's 2 types of agencies out there. So there are some agencies that will request you to pay a retainer. It could be very small, it could be 500, it could be 1,000, or it could be very high. It could be half the agency fee, let's say 50%. And therefore, to a certain extent, I think the agencies want to confirm your willingness and your commitment. I think the lower ones just want to say, okay, if you're willing to put it in, at least you're not going to be quote unquote wasting my time, and you'll have something skin in the game. I think the ones that are at 50%, let's say 10,000, they better have a really custom plan for you if they're going to take that much money up front. The second type of fee structure is which SurrogateFirst does, is a no match, no fee. So we will take our clients, we will show you a surrogate, and we will not charge you until you are successfully matched after the match meeting. And we will only charge 50% at match and 50% past legal. Okay. So we really truly invest with our intended parents. I was an intended parent myself. I know how much financial burden and stress it is. So that is one thing I think that we pride ourselves in terms of the no match, no fee policy. Okay. I hope I answered that one in terms of the agency fee structure. Does anyone have any other questions? I think this one is very interesting as well. Thank you very much. Is that what are the current wait times? Okay, so currently the wait times we're quoting, I believe Ashley, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, was in Q1, which is just a few months ago, we were at 9 months or more. Today, I think that we can safely say that we are at 3 to 4 months. We are very blessed that we worked really hard the last 3 months, and we currently have about 10, 15 available surrogates, and we have many more in the pipeline. This is not normal. I can tell you the whole last couple years, we have 1 by 1 surrogate, and we're matching them very quickly. So I think the match times for us are going to be coming down in the summer to 3 to 4 months. And I think that the average of the industry will be somewhere between 3 to 6 months. Okay. The reason why ours is slightly shorter, and I think this is very important if you're intended parent, but also if you're surrogate, considering who you're going to work for, is that all of our surrogates are 100% pre-qualified. What does that mean? That means that we have invested to collect all of the medical records from the surrogate's births, also with the latest OB clearance letter or pap smear. Okay, so this in itself takes anywhere from 1 to 2 months, okay, and a lot of resources to gather that information. Then we review it. Then we give it to our medical reader to review it, and no red flags, no yellow flags, ready to be sent to the clinic. Secondly, we also do background checks. And lastly, we also do a full blood panel to ensure that there's nothing red flag there as well. So those 3 things have already saved the intended parents time, a month or 2 at the very minimum, potential risk and costs that we invest in front for pre-qualifying the surrogate. And for the surrogate as well, is that once we're doing this, we're doing all our homework up front so we can have faster matches for our surrogates as well. Okay, so that's a great question about the timing, but there's so many factors it takes into calculating why does it take some people 12 months to even see one surrogate, and why does it take one family 2 weeks and they can get matched. Okay, everyone's circumstances are very, very different. All right, so I have 2 minutes before I hit my self-imposed deadline of 50 minutes. If there's any other questions, I would love to answer. And what is the agency fee structure for IPs? Okay, we answered that. Match times. Okay, great. So I would like to just conclude and say thank you so much to all of the surrogates that participate in our survey. We are going to have an intended parent survey coming up, and I'm going to be sharing those results. But from this current survey that we have presented on today, I have 4 or 5 different findings to share with everyone. So if you're interested in understanding the difference between independent surrogacy and agency surrogacy, that is one presentation I'll be coming up in the future. If you're interested in the differences between surrogates that carry for same-sex, single, or traditional families and international families, we have very rich data on that as well. That's a different presentation. I have another presentation that is time trending. So I took all of the trends that are different between 2019 and broken it down to 2021, 22, 23. I'm going to be sharing those trends as well. So we have a lot of amazing information coming up. I'm just really pleased that we're also being recognized by the likes of New York Times, also, Yahoo Life, to be presenting on our findings. So I would just like to thank you all for attending today, and I look forward to hearing from you. And please, please, please do finish the survey for the feedback. I really, really appreciate that to help us have better, to have a better survey in the future. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. At this time, I'm going to conclude the webinar, and I will see you next time. All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.